One of the most common questions that I get as a relationship coach, having sat with over 5,000 couples, is this question. What are the biggest things that determine a happy and healthy relationship? Today, I'm going to be sharing with you the top 5 things that I found happy couples do differently than those who are unhappy in their relationship. These aren't just 5 fluffy tips and tricks. These are 5 things that, if lived consistently, create a thriving relationship that will stand the test of time. Number 1, happy couples fight the fire, not the smoke. So I learned this metaphor of smoke and fire and focusing on the fire when I was a young EMT, about 22 years old, and we were called to fires, and we would just stage the ambulance at any fire because they may need the help of emergency responders. But what I noticed is the firefighters immediately jump to the fire. They start going to the root cause of the smoke. Instead of just fanning it and blowing it everywhere, they went directly to the real source of all that smoke, which is the fire. Remember, the number 1 killer of people in a house fire is the smoke. The same is true for our relationships. The number 1 killer of our relationships is when we spend too much time fighting, arguing, and throwing back and forth the debate about the issues of your life instead of getting down to the real basic core emotional fire that's causing it all. Many marital arguments revolve around surface issues, what I call the smoke. The smoke could be anything in your relationship that you consistently have issues on, the things you argue about in your relationship. It could be about money and kids and sex. It could be about who we're going to go out with, what friends we like, what friends we don't like, our in-laws. It could be anything that's starting to create tension between us. Each and every one of these issues, they're real issues. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that behind each of those issues, there is a more real need that isn't being met. We call that the fire. And one of the things I've learned about the happiest couples is they don't spend as much time in the smoke, and they get down. Sometimes it's scary because there's a little more heat down there by the fire, but they get down and start handling the real issue. The basic principle is you'll end the smoke if you put out the fire and meet the deeper need. And what I teach is the fire is made up of 7 basic needs that everybody needs to have met in their life. They need to know they're safe. They need to know they're trusted. They need to know that they're appreciated and respected and validated. They need to feel encouraged, and they need to know that their partner is more dedicated to them than any other person, place, or thing. Those 7 needs are what I call the starved stuff. The sooner we talk about the starved stuff or the fire, the sooner the fire is put out and the smoke goes away. The signs that you are in the smoke are issues like increased misunderstanding, feeling like you can't trust your partner, and more negativity. If you see the conversation start escalating, it's a sign that you're in the smoke. I want you to start to identify the reoccurring arguments in your marriage. What are the things that come up regularly? What are the issues that you're never seemingly resolving? In fact, you can even draw a little model of smoke and put those issues in that smoke. Then I want you to ask yourself one question. What is the deeper need that's actually driving this issue? Is it safety? Is it trust? Is it appreciation? Is it respect? Is it validation, encouragement, or dedication? What really is the deeper need of my partner on this issue? And if both of us are trying to understand the deeper need of what's going on in the discussion, then you'll start to notice the smoke will slowly kind of dissipate. And now we're talking about the real need that needs to be met. The other thing you can do is try to communicate directly to that need of your partner. If they feel unsafe because of the finances of the family, don't just debate the finances. Help understand and try to understand why they feel so unsafe and what you can do together to make them feel safer about the finances. I've seen, for example, once the couple could talk about what the real issues of the finances were, they both came from different families with different levels of safety and security financially. So what happened is the one that was really good at the money was always in charge of the money, but the one that grew up in a family without the money was always afraid they wouldn't have money. So instead, when they finally talked about the deeper issue of safety and the deeper issue of respect that the couple was having, they could slowly put together a plan where both of them could feel empowered about where the money's going, how much we have, and how much security we have. The power is in understanding the deeper needs and cutting away from the smoke, staying in the fire, and actually validating your partner's feelings. That's the third thing you can do, is take time to validate and accept what your partner is feeling about the issue. Understand their deeper issue by listening to them, summarize back to them what you're hearing them feel and what they're saying that they're feeling, and then we can work together to create solutions. So the second thing happy couples do is they energize solutions, not problems. Focusing on problems often leads to more blame and stagnation, while focusing on solution creates momentum and hope. Instead of dwelling on what's wrong in the relationship, talk about the good that you're trying to create. Identify specific changes that would indicate progress in your marriage. In the 25 years that I've been coaching couples, I have never seen a marriage improved by having completely, exhaustingly discussed all of their problems. Knowing that you have problems is not the same as knowing how to solve them. 1 hour spent on problem talk gives you 100 other examples of problems that you still don't know how to deal with. Now, again, it's not that I don't want you to talk about the issues you have. I do. But if you frame everything as a problem and you keep talking about where it's always broken and it's never worked, then all you're doing is accumulating a bunch of examples of what's not working. Here's an example for you. 1 hour as a coach discussing why you can't kick a field goal in your football game may bring up hundreds of other fears, issues, and problems to deal with. Well, I was having a bad day and my girlfriend didn't like me. And all of a sudden my dad called and said, "Are you ever going to get your act together? Why aren't you doing this?" And if I go into all of these issues to help a person kick a field goal, the dilemma is all of those things become part of kicking the field goal. When in reality, what you might need to do is just kick a field goal and learn how to approach the ball, learn how to set your foot, learn how to swing your leg, learn how to make contact with the ball, learn how to follow through. All of those are the things that work to kick a field goal versus all of the things that got in the way. I didn't even eat lunch today. All of those things, they may be in our mind as what's the cause of our problem, but in the end, there's a field goal that needs to be kicked. Now, I know that sounds simplistic, but there are, according to John Gottman and his great research, as one of the greatest marriage and family researchers, he teaches us that there are solvable things in a marriage and there are going to be perpetual problems in relationships and in the marriage. He talks about the fact that roughly 33% of all of the issues that couples face are problems that can be solved. But notice, only 33% are solvable problems. 66%, on the other hand, are what he calls perpetual problems because they're not always going to change. They may very likely stay the same. For example, you may have a problem with your in-laws because they're really ineffective communicators. They're really kind of petty. They might be mean. And by the way, that may have been how they were raised. That may have been how their grandparents raised them. It's just something that has been a perpetual problem in the family line. You may not just be able to fix your in-laws, right? That might be a problem that might be kind of chronic or constant. Another problem might be anxiety. If your partner has anxiety, that doesn't mean we can just go in and fix it and just stop the person from worrying a lot more than you do. Or if a person has a medical issue or insomnia or other issues, a lot of our biggest issues in our relationships are going to be there because they're just part of life and they're just part of who we are as people. So if 2/3 of our problems are perpetual, then what we need to do is spend as much time as we can solving the problems we can and improving the perpetual issues by creating more and more solutions for things that work. Sure, you can endlessly argue about your partner's ADHD, or we can endlessly focus on solutions, tools, activities, habits, rituals, things we could do to make the ADHD better. The reality we find in our research is that healthy couples solve those things that they can, and they understand the things that they can't solve. They understand them as deeply as they can, and they do as much as they can to find real life solutions to those perpetual issues. Solvable problems like house cleaning and disciplining children and sex and in-laws, those things are things we might be able to create some really powerful solutions around. The perpetual problems are problems that maybe center more on our fundamental differences, maybe personality differences, maybe fundamental differences in your lifestyle needs. One of you may be an extrovert, one might be an introvert, one might need constant stimulation, and one might want to be less stimulated because they're more high sensitive to stimulation. One of you might really love learning and studying and going to a museum on your trips, and the other might love instead to go to some sporting event or go do activities or go scuba diving. The reality is those differences may never change. And it doesn't mean we just have to do the obvious and we'll just go our separate ways or we'll divorce. The reality is the more we work together on understanding each other at a deeper level, the more we're going to take these issues and start finding bridges to grow together on those. In the end, what I found is getting really successful at doing something is really the best medicine. It's generally always better than just having more labels, more excuses, more diagnoses, more judgment against each other. Actually getting good at handling each other's differences, at managing those differences, as accepting the differences. Those are all skills that perform and make you feel better than just simply fighting about it. Most marital problems are personal issues too, by the way. They're not always interpersonal issues. Some of the biggest problems that are causing your tension in your relationship are because you have personal issues that you may have brought to the marriage because your parents divorced, or because you were bullied as a child, or because you have anxiety or you have ADHD. If there are issues that are personal, then those are issues that we need to be addressing personally instead of just hoping our partner will carry that load. It's not fair and it's not enough to just force our partner to live with all of our junk if we're not willing to work on it. When we're willing to deal with our issues to the best that we can, then we can start to trust our partner is in this with us, right? And now as a team, we're going to make our life better and our children's life better. That's the power of focusing on solutions instead of just problem talk. To summarize, remember, you can't fix a problem that you don't understand. So you should spend some time trying to understand the problem. And as soon as you start to get your hands wrapped around it, can I suggest that then you start working on finding solutions. Solutions from where it used to work better when you were dating, solutions that worked really well today, and find things that if we gave you a magic wand and the ideal, relationship was there with two people that had all these differences, what would that look like? And let's start to formulate solutions that we can take into the future. In the end, actually acting on solutions and getting closer to solving our issues is what really creates progress in the marriage. It also gives you more energy, more sustainability, more resiliency, and it really makes us understand that together we can help improve each other's lives. We can heal each other. I think deep down, that's why we're talking about the problem in the first place. But one thing to remember psychologically is that if all you bring up are the negative things that your partner is doing wrong, what you're really trying to tell them adamantly is what you want them to do better. Can I just suggest, instead of spending a lot of energy beating them up on what they don't do well, start identifying what you do want. Instead of telling your partner you never initiate sex, tell your partner, you know what, honey, I miss you and I feel closer to you when we're intimate. Like, do you remember when we were dating? That used to work so well. Do you remember when this was happening? I love that. Do you remember that time when we were on that trip and you were just so into me? Those things made me feel loved, and I'd love to find a way to have a little bit more of that. In the end, it's all about progress, right? And the only difference is how you're going to try to create the progress. Are you going to try to create the progress through negativity, or are you going to try to create the progress through positivity? Generally, what you're going to see is the more you focus on problems and put those problems on someone else, the more you're going to see defensiveness kick up. So in the end, our goal is to do everything we can to get to the solutions as quickly as we can and talk about those solutions openly, hold each other accountable to those solutions until we start to see real progress taking place. So here's a little homework assignment for you. I want you to write down one specific outcome that you'd like to see in your marriage, a positive outcome. Try to frame it positively. For many of you, you might have to first think, what's the thing I want to have him stop doing or have her stop doing? And instead frame it as a positive. Then I want you to share that statement with your partner. Honey, I would really love to improve our ability to have date nights where we're both involved, we're both active, our phones are down, so we can love each other and be connected like we were when we were first married. That's a pretty cool outcome. Now, let's brainstorm actionable steps with your partner to achieve that outcome. Talk about it. Dig deep into it. Don't just sit there and say, well, yeah, but you're the one that's on your phone too. Don't argue about all of that. Instead, stay with the objective that you're trying to seek. Talk it through and start brainstorming ways we can do it. Then I'd love you to then go act on that brainstorm, go out on that date night, and then have a weekly check-in when you and your partner can sit down, talk about how it went, make some adjustments, even identify everything that worked on that date night. Try to find 5 to 10 things that actually worked really well. And let's start using those 5 to 10 things every week on a date night with each other. Does that make sense? Pretty basic, isn't it? In the end, the goal is to take charge of your issues by seriously, intentionally pushing forward solutions, not just problem talk. Okay, now moving on to the third thing that happy couples do is the happy couples recognize the ruts of their relationship. So ruts are what I call the negative relational patterns that couples fall into. It's the simple things that we do naturally that are negative. They're the things that continuously pull us down the same hole every time, right? If you have serious reactivity in an argument, if you notice that the minute she wants to talk, you start to run, that's a rut, right? Or if you notice that the minute we're talking and it gets too excited and angry, we turn to each other and it blows up and then we both withdraw and we ignore each other, that is a rut. Identifying and disrupting these patterns is essential to breaking free and creating a healthier dynamic. Instead of that reactive fight or flight turning on, we need to find something else that we can do instead. So let me just quickly run through a bunch of different ruts, and I want you to see if you have any of these in your relationship. One is called the pursuer-withdrawer, where one partner is always initiating the talk and the other is always avoiding it. It's the chase, the crash, and then the withdrawal, right? The chase, where one of us has to chase the other on an issue. The crash, where we finally come together to talk about it and it blows up. And then, guess what happens? The avoid. We then withdraw from each other, cold shoulder, and we don't talk to each other. That is the most common rut in relationships. Another is reactivity, where the minute somebody says that, the other partner reacts to it and almost ups the ante. And then this one reacts to it and ups the ante, and it constantly elevates the fight. How about negative interpretation? That's another rut. That's where you see your partner's actions through a negative lens. If you could see them positively, negatively, or neutral, you now have a habit of seeing what they're doing as negative. They did that on purpose. They did that to hurt your feelings. They did that because they don't care. That's another rut that we got to watch out for. Another one is self-fulfilling prophecies, right? Where we expect conflict. We expect the partner not to care. And it weirdly always ends up being that way. In the end, these negative ruts are things that we have to fix. There's a great sign that I remember hearing about at the opening of a huge wildlife reserve in Alaska. And the sign says this simple little phrase, choose your rut carefully because you will be in it for hundreds of miles. Whatever rut that was run down by those trucks going into that refuge and that preserve, whichever rut you're in, it's going to be hard to get out of. So choose your ruts carefully. In our relationships, we can have positive ruts too. They're called just positive habits. We break the cycle by stopping the pursue and withdraw chase and instead intentionally making the decision based on our most important values in the marriage. What are we really about? We can assume positive intent in our partner, and we can do that to counteract the negative interpretation of others. Dr. Paula Lack Davis taught me 3 really important keys to forming these habits. She calls them cues, routines, and rewards. Recognize the cues that you're in the fight or flight pattern. Those cues, very basically, are negative emotion, misunderstanding and confusion, and mistrust. Whenever you see those cues, you're in a rut. Okay. Second thing I want you to do is pay attention to the routine. Learn to take the time to get out of the fight or flight routine and choose a new routine. For example, with our clients, we teach them a routine called getting real. That is a pattern of stopping the fight after we notice the cues, sitting with each other, eye to eye, knee to knee, and talking and getting into 4 different levels of communication. Recognizing emotion, exploring the story behind the emotion, attending to where they're really starved, and then lifting the conversation instead of arguing. Another thing that you can do outside of the routines is look for the rewards. Notice that there are actual benefits of having successful conversations with your partner. It feels so good when we can talk through something and it works. It feels so good. That's a good reward. Take in that moment of peace and enjoy it and enjoy the reward. So here's some things you can do to actually make sure you are paying attention to your ruts and staying out of the bad ones. Identify one reoccurring pattern that you see in your relationship, and I want you to discuss it with your partner. Talk about what that pattern looks like. Don't talk about what they do. Talk about that pattern and what you do in that pattern, okay? Spend time actually identifying one pattern you and your partner want to work on. Number 2, I want you to practice pausing before reacting. I want you to learn to stop and think before your partner's reacting. You could even, if you needed to, stop the reactivity by saying, babe, you know what? I want to get my head in the right place for this conversation. So can we stop for a second? Let me get ready so I'm emotionally ready to have a really healthy conversation with you. Learn to pause. Just create a little space between the stimulus of whatever we're going to talk about and the response. If you're going to choose to fight, flight, freeze, or if you're going to choose to stay in and get real. The third thing you can do is assume positive intent in your partner's actions and verbalize it during the discussions. Tell your partner how much you appreciate them and always assume their goal is good. Even if it's coming off wrong, their desire is to be with you. So we can slow this down, give them the benefit of the doubt, both sides doing that with each other, and you'll see some pretty amazing things happen. The fourth thing that happy couples do differently is that they focus on changing their future, not their past. Focusing on past or the past conflicts or past perceived wrongs often leads to unproductive arguments. In fact, you're going to see a lot of you do that. A lot of us go to the past and we start bringing up issues and throwing them into the conversation today. It's usually a sign we haven't healed from the past, right? So we can talk about the past. Again, I'm not saying you can't talk about it. I'm just saying your ultimate goal is to move forward healthier. Our ultimate goal is to create a new future that's better than our past. But if we're always moving back to the past, guess what's going to happen? We're going to go back and we're going to go back to past pains and past memories, and we're going to bring that into the present day fight. Instead, what we could do is redirect our energy toward building a shared future together, filled with potential, filled with growth. See, the problem with focusing on the past is it creates kind of a subjective, biased argument. It's the he said, she said. And if you're going to notice, both of you, when you're arguing from something that happened in the past, neither one of you actually has all the information. So we're actually not even talking about the same event. And the farther it goes back into the past, the less together we really are just on the sheer data, on the basic facts. In fact, how many times have you ever had one of your discussions turn into your partner saying, I don't remember that. And you're like, oh, how convenient that you don't remember that. That is a sign that we're fighting with a data set in a historical event that neither one of us have understood historically. So what are the odds we're going to understand it today? So instead of going to your unhealthy story, instead of going to your victim story that you may have played, instead of going to the villain story where you cast your partner as the antagonist, instead of making yourself the hero of overcoming and all of the sacrifices you've made, what if we leave some of those stories and instead we live in the conversation right now and we focus on the actionable steps that we want to create today to have the change that is different from our past? That's the ultimate objective, right? Of focusing on the future in the present instead of dwelling on the past in the present. The way we do that is we, again, go back to our most difficult, real emotions, get out of the smoke, get down to the fire in the present moment, and then we actually can start together to look towards a future that would be brighter for both of us. Here's some things you can do to make that happen. Number one, identify one story that you tell yourself about your partner. Think of a story that you're really good at. Oh, he just doesn't care. Or he's just lazy. Or she is just so controlling. Or she is just such a worrier. Holy cow. Or she's crazy. Think of those stories that you tell about yourself and your partner. Do you tell a lot of stories that you're the victim of your partner? You didn't even want to move to that house. You were forced to do something. And I want you to see if you can reframe your past story positively into a healthier light. We were young. We didn't know quite what we were doing. And my husband and I thought it might be better that we lived closer to our family. And little did we know that when we did that, he would spend almost every night with his brothers at his house playing video games. That's a healthier story than, yes, and he abandoned me and he left me and he didn't care about me. So I want you to identify the story that you tell. And I want you to tell it about yourself, especially if you're a victim and if he's a villain or if vice versa. And I want you to reframe it positively. I want you to restate the story as if you're empowered and strong and you've conquered it and you're not a victim. And instead, we were naive. We were inexperienced. We didn't have a clue. Make sense? Number two, what I want you to do is then share a future focused goal with your partner and discuss how you can achieve it together. What is something you want to be together on? And it could be something that you've healed from the past and you want to continue it into the future. But I want you to share a future focused goal with your partner. Honey, I would love us to be able to make sure that from here forward, we always come together and we counsel with each other as partners on all of our issues. And I'd like to do it, and you can discuss ways you think it can be achieved and then invite them, see if they want that same goal. And honestly, you're going to usually see they do. And then let's start sharing and brainstorming ways to make that goal happen together. The third thing you can do is, instead of rehashing the past arguments, by redirecting your conversations to solutions, right? Instead of going to the rehash, notice that the rehash is just one of those ruts that we're in. And what we're going to do is move back, like we taught earlier, about getting into some solutions that would work. Especially once we've been understood, once our fire has really been dealt with, our safety, trust, appreciation, respect, validation, encouragement, and dedication. Once that stuff's been dealt with, guess what? Now we can move forward. Now we can actually start dreaming together, having goals together, and holding each other accountable to creating that awesome future together. I know this is a lot to digest. This is all of the stuff that we've been putting on matttownsend.com. If you want to go a little deeper, go to matttownsend.com and check out a lot of our solutions and tools there. It will help you kind of practice these things, and will give you dozens and dozens of skills and tools to actually make it a habit in your life. Now, let's get to the fifth and final thing that happy couples do differently. Happy couples focus on a healthy marriage, not a perfect marriage. A thriving marriage requires nurturing all aspects of relationships, right? It means healthy, and healthy means whole. The word healthy came from the root word hale and hearty, which meant whole and complete. To have a healthy marriage means we are mentally strong. Our heads are in the game. It means that we're emotionally connected. Our hearts are in the game. It means that we're physically one, that our hands are in the game. We're lifting and serving and touching and loving each other. And it means that we are spiritually, or our aspirational goals are on the same page. Our hopes and our dreams are going together. The goal of a marriage is to be healthy and to share united heads, hearts, hands, and hopes. All of that is what the goal of a marriage is. Whenever I coach couples, I don't coach them to stay married. I coach them to get healthy. And almost universally, once we start getting healthier as an individual and as a couple, guess what happens? We stay together. We bond together. We solve our bigger problems. We move into a healthier place in life. Neglecting any of these areas, mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual, will create an imbalance and a dissatisfaction in your life. It will start to wear you down as a couple, right? So the 4 areas that we focus on, and in fact, all of my content, all of my workshops, and my Starved book was about these 4 areas of health. The health is about getting your head in the game, having the character, the discipline to grow mutual trust with each other, right? That it's getting your mentally strong body and will to align to being now in a relationship where we serve and give and love another. Once our head is in the game, we have the character, we have the integrity, we have the discipline, we have the peace to actually trust each other. And if both of us have our heads in the game, trust is higher, which makes the relationship move faster. We also then can move to the heart section. That's where I have a really effective way to share my heart with you, and I can understand your heart better. The hearts is all about communication. It's about clarification. It's about understanding. In the end, when we get our hearts in the game, my heart doesn't just yearn for your heart. My heart understands your heart. In fact, it creates intimacy with your heart. The word intimacy comes from the Latin word intimus, which means the inner being of another. To truly be intimate with another, you've got to have the character, the head, and the heart to get into that person so you can understand their inner being. You can understand their fears, their concerns, their dreams. Make sense? Heads and hearts have to go together. That's a whole solution to a marriage. And once we got our head and our heart together, wouldn't it be powerful if we could get our hands to now operationalize and make those dreams and goals happen? The hands is all about serving. It's about loving your partner in the way that they prefer, right? The love languages that you've all learned about, loving styles that I teach. Every one of us, if I know my partner needs something, I should serve that need. Well, I know, but what if I don't like serving that need? That is what relationships are about, right? It's about many times giving something that's not natural for us to give and learning to give it and being vulnerable in it. And then when somebody serves you that way, you actively, intentionally recognize that act of service, that gesture, and you love them back in return. There's no greater truth than the reality that we love the people we serve. If you and your partner are losing the love in your relationships, it could be a heads issue, lack of character or discipline. It could be a hearts issue because we're not understanding and communicating with each other. It could also be a hands issue because we're not serving. We're not loving. We're not lifting our hands to help with our partner. Instead, we're just now taking care of our own needs. And the fourth thing that helps us create a healthy kind of focus on relationships is the fact that we are setting shared goals and dreams and working toward them into the future. We have a shared set of value systems. We're spiritually connected. We can see the blessings of our life. We can see the awe in our partner. We enjoy watching them as they are taken away in some really cool scene, right? Watching a sunset or just watching your partner do something they thoroughly enjoy. The hopes creates the ability to grow. In the end, the healthiest, happiest relationships are growing together. They're developing. They're becoming something every year, more this year than they were last year. That, in the end, is the ultimate goal of all of our relationships. And notice that all of those things I just talked about that create healthy relationships, those are all more valuable than a perfect marriage. There's no such thing as a perfect marriage. I don't believe you find a soulmate. I don't. And I'm a pretty spiritual person. I believe you forge a soulmate. You create the soulmate by getting your head in the game, your heart in the game, your hopes and your hands all in the game at the same time. And when you do that consistently, line upon line, getting healthier every day, you are strong and you can take on the world together, which in the end is really all we want, right? In the end, we all got together because we wanted somebody to be there for us, that we could take on the world with us. We also need to respect our partner's individuality, their choices. They're going to do life differently than you. And a healthy couple can accept those differences and they can add to them. A healthy partner can also sometimes not have to do their difference in order to serve the other. In the end, it's a mix of constantly respecting and honoring each other and serving each other. It's losing ourselves to find ourselves. And sometimes it's pushing our agenda a little bit stronger so that they too can grow with us. In the end, here's a couple things that I'd suggest I think all of us can do to create more healthy and happy marriages instead of just being fixated on being a perfect marriage. Number one, identify one small act of service you can do every day for your partner. What's one thing, one simple act that is really not easy for you, but you know would dramatically impact them? Can you imagine the benefit of you and your partner every day trying to find one act of service that was different every day that would dramatically impact your partner's life? That would be 365 a year. Can you imagine 10 years of that? What's the impact of that? The second thing you can do is discuss your long-term goals as a couple and outline those goals and those steps. What are the actions we're going to take? What could be more powerful? Imagine that. What could be more powerful every year than to review the goals we made last year and together to notice that we're going to hold each other accountable? We said we were going to budget and save money. Look, we saved $10,000 this year. We're making it happen. Line upon line, day upon day, year after year, we're going to slowly create a life together with real goals being accomplished. And the third thing you could do is set aside time daily or weekly to make sure you're connecting emotionally. Make sure you and your partner sit down and have a ritual daily, weekly, monthly, annually. I suggest 3 to 5 times a day when you two are going to connect as a couple, when you're going to talk, when you're going to have dinner, when you're going to listen to each other. How about 1 to 2 times a month when we're going to go out and do something really important, valuable, that's just bonding to us? How about simply, what if we could do a weekly activity, one thing a week, one date night a week that we're going to do consistently? And how about every year? What if we went on a trip for your birthday, for my birthday, for our anniversary? Those are called rituals, and rituals are the number one tool we've all got to make sure we keep the connection alive and we're moving the connection into the future. Make sense? In the end, we're all in this together. Don't think that you can't be happy because you have differences. The research is clear. The happiest and healthiest couples have a healthy dose of conflict. They're not always happy all the time. But what the happy couples are doing are these 5 things that we've gone over in this podcast. Number 1, happy couples fight the fire, not the smoke. They get to the real starved stuff, not just fighting about the day-to-day issues. Number 2, happy couples energize solutions, not problems. If you're going to give your energy, your focus, your time, focus it on the answers, the solutions of what we need to be doing better, and talk about those solutions. Go see what other healthier couples are doing and start living those solutions and activating those solutions, not activating and energizing more thoughts about your problems. The third thing happy couples do is they recognize their ruts. They're not naive. They're not pretending like they walk on water. Their partner's jacked up. They understand that they have issues. And those issues, whatever they are, negativity, fight or flight, reactivity, whatever you've got going on as a rut, I want you to address it and talk about your ruts and start figuring out a new future with fewer ruts. The fourth thing that happy couples do is they focus on changing their future, not their past. The past is what it is. So let's get present. Let's learn from it. Let's take what we need to do to make it better, find the solutions, and let's start building that future. There is infinite potential in your future. There is limited potential in your past. It's gone, right? It's spent. It's finite. It's gone. There's infinite potential in today and tomorrow. So what are you guys going to do as a happy couple today to change your future and lead that future to where you want it to go? And the fifth and final thing that healthy couples do that others don't do is they focus on a healthy marriage, not a perfect marriage. A healthy marriage, if you remember, means we're healthy in a variety of ways: heads, hearts, hands, and hopes. We have the character to be a one in our couple and our relationship and to build trust. We have the communication to understand each other and to be understood. We can talk through our issues and really, truly understand what's going on with each other. We have the companionship and the cooperation that we need to actually serve and love and build solutions and act on those solutions together, to use our hands to lift and to love each other. And the final thing that we do is we change, we grow, we develop, and we get our hopes as part of our life. We're changing and growing toward a higher purpose, a higher vision, and a closer relationship with each other. In the end, that's happy couples. Don't think you're not near that. Every one of us are living some parts of these good things. So I challenge you to go start turning your relationship into a happy and healthy relationship by just simply trying to do some of the activities we've discussed today, or go to matttownsend.com and check out all the programs we have. And let's get deeper. Let's get coaching. Let's start becoming one as fast as we can.